Welcome, welcome. You have just tuned into the South Star Classroom. I am Jubilee, and this is my beloved co host, David Castillo. Shout out to Omar and Charles doing the things that they do, but they will be back at some point, okay? And we'll miss y'all, but we're going to have a great conversation anyhow. Let's check in real quick and do the opposite of what Charles says we do because we don't really do that. We don't really take 12 minutes to check in. So, how are you doing today?
All right. I'm doing well. We're feels like we're right in the throes of summer, but then school comes around.
It's
So we
just
start school on Monday. Um, son's been in band camp for the last 2 weeks. So
hands
doing
down.
like full days, doing
Yes.
marching band camp, getting back into it. And yeah, I mean, everything's on track there. Um, we'll see what happens Monday, but they give out they don't give out the schedules until like the last minute. So I think they start
Yeah.
school Monday, but they don't give the schedules out. Well, actually, they give them out today, which is early.
Yeah.
So we'll know, but hopefully we don't have to do any schedule adjustments because that could be a pain in the you know what.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, what else is going on? Let's see. Work has been busy, kind of picking up as the school year is starting. People are. I don't know if it's like something that happened like with COVID. Once you came back from COVID, it seems
Mm.
like there's I don't know. People seem to be kind of okay with the slower pace of work, or just I don't know what it is. I'm just like I'm down with it as long as I'm not the only one.
I think COVID slowed a lot of things down. I think COVID is what
Yeah,
made people say, and why do we work 5 days a week again?
exactly. Yeah. I was like, what do you mean you're only working half day on Friday? Well, I guess I will too.
But that
So,
part, yes, yes, exactly. Yeah.
yeah, but that's pretty
Well,
much it. What's going on with you?
yeah, so similar band camp. This is week 2 of band camp, 12-hour days in the sun and,
Woo!
yeah,
12. I got
yeah,
I got
they
something like
got
that. Yeah.
they go from like 8 to 8, and then they get a little. They do get lunch, they get lunch, they get dinner, and yeah, I dropped off some Gatorade this morning and some white teas because my oldest was like, I need to be able to change my shirt. I guess that's how much they practice and sweat. They hate the new uniforms, but whatever. I'm like, look, I
Yeah.
paid $40, however much the uniform is, so you're gonna wear it with pride. So that band camp signals that school is nigh. It's coming, which means I'm gonna have a senior, a high
Oh
school.
goodness. Yeah. Yep.
Right. So I'm prepping myself. I registered him for his SAT in a few weeks. It's like it's real deal. So yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's me. I'm just trying to take the time to recalibrate and figure out how this year is going to go with all these moving pieces and a senior that's going to leave my home and go to college soon. And that's my check-in. It's crazy,
Wow.
right?
Yeah, it is crazy. Uh, a post that came into my Facebook feed.
Mm,
Um, a couple of I kind of work colleagues, and then they were parents at the last school where I was principal,
mm,
the Montessori school, and so their
yeah.
kids were in the school,
Mm,
and they were, I think their kids were like when I started there, the kids were like second and third graders, right, little kids.
mm, mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden pops up on my feed today, their youngest son, who was a second grader at the time, has now like come home from like, you know, some tour with the Navy. He's in the Navy and he's all dressed up in the Navy gear. And I was like, oh my god, he was just a baby, like it's great how fast time flies. It's really insane.
It's they say it when you bring children into the world. They do say that, but nobody ever
Yeah,
listens. Oh, the time flies. Enjoy it. And I'm like, oh, And now it's like, oh my god, they're right.
yeah,
They're right.
exactly.
Tempest fugit, as my sixth grade teacher, Miss Dillon, taught us. Tempest fugit. Time flies. Yeah.
There you go.
All right, let's get into today's topic. We are talking
Yep.
about third grade retention and whether or not this is an effective strategy for improving reading proficiency. And so, a recent study that was featured in Education Week adds a compelling new angle to the ongoing debate surrounding third grade reading retention policies across the country. Currently, 18 states have laws requiring third graders who fall short on reading proficiency tests to repeat the grade, a policy frequently tied to recent science of reading legislation. Researchers from American University and Syracuse University analyzed data from over 500,000 Ohio students to evaluate the real world impact of these high stakes benchmarks. Here's what they discovered: they discovered that the mere prospect or threat of retention led to notable gains in end of year reading and math scores, even for students who were ultimately promoted. These reading improvements persisted through seventh grade, largely because flagging at risk students compels schools to deploy targeted interventions, monitor progress, and overhaul instructional strategies. Proponents argue these findings prove that retention policies serve as a vital accountability catalyst. That's what we're going to talk about today, forcing districts and parents to intervene before a child falls permanently behind. Critics, however, warn that relying on the fear of grade repetition introduces unnecessary social emotional stress and fails to address the root systemic causes of learning gaps. So this brings us to a key question for today's show. Is the threat of third grade retention a necessary driver for early literacy success? Or is it a high stakes mandate that does more harm than good? Initial thoughts.
Oh my
Initial
goodness.
thoughts. I know.
I'm gonna
Bill, I want you
drop
to
in.
weigh in. I see you, Bill.
Yeah, I'm gonna
Yep.
drop in the chat. I'm sure you already saw it, but this is the actual study they're referring to in the
Thank you.
private chat. Yeah, it's
Yes, thank
I'm
you.
gonna go through this. Wow. Ah,
I
so
know.
so if I'm a legislator and I'm like sitting in the somewhere on the dais or in the chambers of a state, Senate or Congress, House, whatever,
Yeah.
a state house, and that may be like the only tool that I have to push or to I wouldn't say disrupt, but send a message that like this is very serious, right?
Yeah.
Um, so there's that. I don't know what else they can do. So it is. I mean, it's essentially it's a it's a it's a threat, right? It's like, well, it's not really a threat. Yeah, it's a threat. Um, and so it ends up waking up parents. And when you first said it, I'm like, there's no like second or third grader that's gonna be like, I better get my shit together now. No, 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 no. This is like this is like school system saying like we don't want to have these third grade retentions on our dashboard,
Yeah.
and they're probably parents that are saying like we don't want our child to be retained because there's a whole lot that goes along with that.
Yeah.
So your original question is, I mean, I think it's many things.
Yeah.
I think it's many things. I don't know if I think in addition to that, there needs to be a lot more accountability for the systems to
Hmm.
ensure. So say like a child. Are they using the statewide assessment, or is this like how are they determining reading proficiency? We should
I'm
start
not
there.
1,000% sure. I'd have to go back and reread, but I do think
Oh,
they did. I think they use state things, but I think they also use interims.
okay, so they're looking at a bunch of different indicators. That's very interesting.
Yeah. I'm not.
Oh,
Let me
man.
back up. Yeah.
Um, okay. Yeah. I mean, I think that's my initial response. I have a
Yeah.
lot more to say, but yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm with you. I do think it's a scare tactic, and I also think it the responsibility lands on pretty much all the stakeholders. But my larger question is, what happened in second, first, and kindergarten?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Like, that's my larger question.
yeah.
The fact that we're highlighting third grade to say, oh, if you don't meet proficiency in third grade, you don't have a
Mhm.
shot. You're going to get stuck here. Versus, let's make sure that we have all hands on deck to provide high quality literacy instruction and those providing those foundational tools in kindergarten, first and second grade is, I think, why we even need, or why people even lean towards implementing these sorts of policies and passing this sort of legislation, honestly.
Yep.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I think um, philosophically, like at the high school level, we were always very adamant that, like, especially for seniors,
Yeah.
we're like, if there is the possibility
Hmm.
that, student is not going to have enough credits to graduate, like we communicate that clearly in multiple ways, in person, electronically, through the mail, as early as possible, right?
Hmm.
It's a little different because then you're talking about like particular classes where they may be deficient in credits,
Yeah.
but philosophically the same idea. I think what you're getting at, because what you don't want to have happen is, what we want to avoid is a student's been in school for kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade. They've been in public school for 4 years.
Yes.
They take an assessment, Ohio's state ELA assessment. They don't pass it, and then they get like, like. So what I would want to know is, like, I think what you're getting at is, number one, looking at like instructional quality, looking at curriculum quality, and then going back, like if you're a student that didn't pass the third grade assessment, I want to see justification, not just using that one data point, but I want to look at
Yep.
your second grade scores, your first grade scores, your kindergarten scores. Like, where was there an opportunity for an intervention,
Yep.
before we get to this point?
Yep.
Uh, be- I mean, I've told the story on the show before. Um, Micah was, behind in we identify, well, we didn't. His teachers identified that he was behind in reading when he was in kindergarten.
Yeah.
Uh, Come like January, right? So January kindergartner, the curriculum that they were using, the assessment they were using showed that he was about 3 months behind. Because you know how it is. It's like if you're doing it really well, like you kind of know exactly where a student should be, like
Yeah.
in those early years by the month, right? That's how
Yeah.
kind of crazy it gets. And so, um, they're like, well, it's January, and he's actually reading, at the level of, it's like a combination of like whatever it was, like reading and then comprehension, at the level of a, what was it, like it was October, right? But it was January, and
Mm.
so, they put him into a small reading group for about a month. That didn't impact his regular instruction, um, and he got into a small reading group. Some of this stuff is like very controversial now, like leveled reading groups and pull out, push in
Yeah.
interventions, but it worked for him, and they tracked it the whole way. They tracked his progress the whole way, took copious notes, and after a month, he had caught up, and and then they removed him from that group. You know,
Yeah.
but that was in kindergarten, right? So early notification, early intervention.
That's right.
You can imagine if like he just got on to struggle and struggle and struggle, and all of a sudden they're like, your kid has to repeat, third grade.
Yes.
And a lot of
Yes.
parents not knowing, like, okay, it'd be like, okay, well, I guess if they have to repeat, not knowing what their rights are, not just the legal rights, but also um, like the ethics of a school system, you know, like not taking any accountability and just like, you know, using this kind of a stick approach is it can be pretty unethical if it's not done well.
Yeah. I think what you just shared, I'm always thinking about the triangle, right? It's the
Uh-huh.
school, it's home, it's the student, you know? And when that triad is working, when that relationship works and everybody is doing their part, then you get the result for the most part, you get the result that you're talking about, right? And we have another example in the chat from Eric Williams said, my daughter had delayed reading due to a speech and auditory issue. We
Mm-hmm.
homeschooled, so she wasn't punished for being behind, which is a whole nother thing. The speech issue threw off her confidence and frustration kicked in. She hated reading until she completed the speech therapy. And at age 8, she reads all the time and has gotten better. I can't imagine a public school punishing her for that, right? And so, I mean, let's talk about that, right? So, the idea that a legislation exists to say your kid cannot go on, right? If threatening to hold a third grader back is what it takes to finally get schools and parents to give
Yeah.
them the reading support they need, is this a policy success or is it a failure of the education system? Is it a mixture of both?
Um, I think it's a very oh my gosh, it's a very odd way for for it feels like, you know, it's an odd way when we talk about accountability. You're basically pushing accountability directly onto like families and young people,
Yeah.
and I have a big problem with that because then you're kind of like you're not really addressing the root cause of the issue, which is a couple of things. And I'll get to Eric's point, but the first is that, you know, like what is currently happening in our elementary systems. What does instruction look like? What does
Yeah.
curriculum look like? What does the assessment data tell us? How is it being communicated? How is it being communicated to families? What types of interventions are in place? Um, how is that being recorded and communicated? Okay, there's that. And then, you know, looking at Eric's example, um, it's so interesting because you hit the third grade and then you don't pass a particular important assessment, but then they're going to make you go back and take everything else that has, you know, everything else again. You have to take like third grade math and third grade, like, you know, science, or, you know, what all that
Everything.
stuff again. I'm like, so you're talking about a very blunt tool,
Yeah.
but it kind of has to be a blunt tool because the system is very it's just not flexible at all, right?
Mhm.
Imagine like, okay, we're going to move you to the fourth grade, Jubilee,
Yeah.
um, but we're going to have you in a reading intervention group that's probably made up of some fourth graders and some third graders, right? Like it when you get into elementary school, it's so like grade band oriented. It
Yeah.
makes it difficult to think what does it
Outside
look like for a
confines.
student to like, yeah, for a student to
Yeah,
like that
advanced
falls behind.
hearing. Yes. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So, I don't know. This kind of pisses me off, right? Because I think, to your point, you retain a student in the third grade, right? Which means they're in the same school.
Hmm.
Who knows if they're going to be in the same class, have the same teacher? We don't know if there's going to be anything that's improved or better about the quality of instruction that that child is receiving. What's the point,
Hmm.
right?
Yep.
Like you were in Mr. Belvedere's class as a
Yeah.
third grader,
Put him in there
you
again.
made no growth. And we're going to put you back in Mr. Belvedere's class because you, child, are the problem, right? I heard a presenter say, and I'm forgetting his name, but that there's not an achievement gap, there's an opportunity gap, right? And so I think it's not a very well thought out plan. To me, it's more of a siren, right? If it was a plan, then to me it'd have more strategy connected to it that goes all the way back to when a child first starts school. And we can go all the way back to 3K. I would change some of this 3K and pre-K stuff they're doing. That's great that they painting and playing with the Legos and working on their fine motor skills and all of those things, getting the social emotional and socialization. Great. But get them kids reading. Why y'all playing?
Please.
Especially in Black and Brown communities. We don't have time, okay? If we start school early, we don't need to just be coloring for 5 periods, okay? And in my school, when I was principal, we had pre-K, right? And yes, there are very strict guidelines on what you can do and what you can't do if you're receiving, city and state and federal funding for these specific pre-K programs. But that's just my overall criticism, because to me, that could be a very easy win when kids come to school in pre-K, right? So fine, if you don't have 3K, you don't have pre-K and kindergarten, and you're saying we're putting this legislation in place, we want the people to know, honey, you're going to go back in 3rd grade if you don't pass, then what are the milestones attached to that? What are the developmental milestones attached to this to say, and because we're serious about retaining students in 3rd grade, here are the resources we've put out. Right. We're going to share this with families, with schools, with principals, with districts, so that they know by the time, to your point, kindergarten October hits, kindergarten December hits, kindergarten February hits, kindergarten May hits, right? These are the milestones. And we're going to attach an assessment to that. We're going to make sure it's standards-based, it's grade appropriate, so that we know that the child is developing appropriately towards being fully literate by 3rd grade. So I want to see the opposite, as opposed to the, penalization. I want to see the, folks being resourced, and kind of backwards planning. If we want our students to be literate by 3rd grade, here are the things that we are putting in place. And we're holding you even more accountable for effectively implementing these pieces, because we know if you don't, we won't have 3rd graders who are literate. The slap on the hand, it doesn't do anything. And I do agree that it places more pressure on families, but the families are not in the classrooms every day. So those
I mean, you could easily be assigned, I think most of this is like random nowadays. You could be assigned, your kid could be assigned like a kindergarten, a 1st grade, a 2nd grade teacher that are like, 1st or 2nd year teachers, right?
Yes.
And it's like, I mean, that's literally like life trajectory altering a gamble right there. And so I think this makes me think of my time at the Montessori school too, because we would retain students from time to time. And it really wasn't like so narrowly focused on like a literacy data point.
Yeah.
But that was a big component of it. But we really took like a more like whole child approach to it.
Yes.
And also considered like, when were they born? Were they born on the early end of the window or the late end of the window? And what would that impact look like going into like the following years? And what would it look like for student to stay in the same class, or is it in their best interest to move classes, to a different teacher? But we're talking like deep conversations with teachers, with administration, with families, with students, even like early elementary students, with literacy specialists, sometimes pulling in members from the special education team, taking all that into consideration. And it's not really like it's not like a one indicator decision. It's really looking at the whole child and everybody kind of agreeing that like this is in the best interest of the child. This is what's happened. This is where we haven't seen progress, and everybody's kind of on board with the new plan.
Yes.
But that's very different from some legislation coming out of Sacramento that says that, if you don't pass the ELA assessment in 3rd grade, you've got to repeat. That feels
crazy.
It is crazy. Yeah.
That's crazy. Because do the teachers have to repeat when they don't know how to teach? Like, what do teachers have to repeat? I just have some questions. Do you have to do remediation beyond a pip. Like, what do you have to do? When what does the principal have to do if they're not a strong instructional leader? If they're not providing coaching and feedback and observing and providing, resources and tools for teachers to be great. Like, I have so many questions. And honestly, I think retention should be a very, very last resort. Yes, as a former school leader, as a former school administrator, yes, I have retained kids, but I don't even feel comfortable saying because it was in partnership with the family. I'm not going to say I've almost never held a kid back that a family didn't agree with, but if I had to do that, there had to be a huge reason, documented by data, right? Backed by data that shared, okay, this is why the student had to be retained, right? And only for me, my rule on retention, right, as a former school leader, is it's got to really help the child. It can't be for the purpose of retaliation because Miss Suzanne thinks she got an attitude and she ain't never gonna be nothing. First of all, you can't work if you think that, but that's another story, right? But like, it can't be for any other reason than for the advancement of the student. If it's not going to help the student, then what are we doing? We're trying to make a point. And I think that's partly what this legislation is about. Is we're trying to make a point here. No, you don't hold kids back to make a point. And for any student, to my recollection, right? Because I feel like I remember parents coming back to say thank you, right? I've had to hold a student back. Again, the decision was made collectively, right? Of course, I had to have the difficult conversation, but collectively we decided, all right, the student needs to be held back. They're struggling in reading. They're currently in 4th grade. They're reading at a now 2nd grade level. Maybe they came in reading on a kindergarten first, but we worked together, provided all the interventions, right? Parents did what they had to do at home. And that child moved from a kindergarten to a 2nd grade level, but they in 4th grade, right? Yeah. And so we just having the conversation of what that looks like. And lastly, to your point about disbanding the grade band mentality, that we have to move up as classes. We first must go to second must go to third. No, if you are this same 4th grader, you're reading on a 2nd grade level, I'm going to figure out how to structure your schedule so you can still do 4th grade things. And then for reading, we're going to have a conversation about mindset, efficacy, right? Self-esteem. We're going to have a conversation about all those things so that I can prepare you to go to a 2nd grade reading group with a dynamite teacher who's going to get you together, small group instruction, intervention. So you might be on the 2nd grade reading track, but you're moving with 4th grade and the other areas that you are proficient in. There's a lot of different.
Yeah, that makes so many. It's like we've talked about it on the show before, but maybe not enough. But I love this comment here. We'll come back to it. The concept of doing like place-based learning. So for high school, kids doing some schooling at the school and then going out and doing like internships or doing real world education, like on the job site or or community service. That kind of thinking freaks out like these systems. They're like, oh, we have instructional minutes. The instructional minutes have to happen here, right? So rigid, so rigid. And the same thing with the grade band issue, where if you think about it, I mean, even social, emotionally, physiologically, like, we know that there's a difference between boys and girls in age and development, right? And then even within girls and boys, like everyone develops at such a different rate, and then and that impacts their ability to advance academically, and to demonstrate that. And it's like you're putting all these kids into like one, all this 2nd grade based on your birthday, these ranges. It's very, very artificial, and it works for a lot of kids, and a lot of kids it doesn't. And I think, let's be honest, when we're talking about like this retention policy, I don't want to do it now, but I'll look at the data after the show. But we've always said, when we talk about literacy, we're really talking about uh, African American students and Latino students that are
Yep.
overrepresented, and I can
Yep.
damn near assure you that they are overrepresented in this study,
That's right.
for sure.
Yep.
And there are, I mean, there are incredible, like there's research and data on this, like the social emotional effects of retaining a student,
Yep.
that some people never like, some kids never like, they never recover from, even into their adult years, right?
Yes. Yes.
If you've ever had to retain a student, like I remember like looking at the face of elementary school kids that we ended up retaining when they come back that next year and they're in that same class or a different class but the same grade level, and they just have a different look on their face. And I know you know that look, and
Yes.
that's like, it's serious, it's
Yes.
very serious. Like something has happened, like their whole being, their whole like
Yes. It's deflated.
is deflated. Yeah, and
Yes.
it's like it manifests itself like physically. You can see it.
Absolutely. And I got a
So,
story about that too.
oh my God. So I mean, um, when I first got to the urban Montessori, and
Yeah.
I've told the story before, but I'll say it again here because I think it's relevant. We didn't even have a reading curriculum.
Mm.
And so we had the oldest kids at the time, I think were either third or fourth graders. We were still kind of growing up to the eighth grade.
Yep.
And I remember doing observations, and in one class, it was like our upper elementary class. So this student might have been like in the fourth grade. Everybody was like, it was a work period. Kids were reading, kids were doing, different, math works or whatever they were working on.
Yep.
And then there was always this one student that was like would be rolling on the rug, you know, um, just like not engaging in work. And
Yep.
the Montessori approach is very different. It's very much like when the
Let
child is
them
ready to
roll.
learn, we can create the conditions, and when the child is ready to learn, they will come.
Yes.
Um, and so, I think that also works for a lot of kids, and for some it
Yes.
doesn't. And so, I'm
Yeah.
saying like, okay, I want to look at the student's academic history, and sure
Mm-hmm.
enough, was reading like years behind grade level, had been retained already in an earlier grade, and I was
Yep.
like, so when do we actually intervene here? And these Montessorians were like, he will read when he's ready to read. I'm like, he's gonna be reading he's gonna be reading like science fiction novels in prison. That's what's gonna
Yes.
happen because he was a young black boy. And I'm
Oh
like,
my goodness gracious.
do you understand, like, by sitting
The
around and
crime.
enabling this kind of activity,
Yes.
do you understand what you are doing? Like, this
The
is the school
crime.
to prison pipeline right here.
Yes.
And so we
Yes.
put an end to that. But the flexibility of the Montessori environment. So this is like the flip side of it, was that you could have, you have primary, you have lower elementary, upper elementary, adolescent program. So you did have, you have mixed classes of like 2 to 3 grade bands, all
Yep.
based on like the planes of development, going back to like the, uh, the Italian researchers, Piaget and all of them. And that kind of works. That gives you a lot more flexibility to
Yep.
say, okay, you're in a lower elementary class, grades one through three, and you're going to be in there for 3 years. So
Yeah.
you're gonna kind of ride a wave, and then you're going to fall behind. And we just need to make sure that by the time you move on from third to fourth,
Yes.
from lower to upper, you're ready for that.
Yes.
But we also had a mindset where like we can still move you into upper elementary and still have you maybe visit a lower elementary class for particular lessons, but not to redo the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I agree. And I was a third grade teacher. That was my favorite grade to teach. Imagine, right? You do all you can to be told, well, if you don't get these kids over the hump, they all gonna be left back. And it's like, well, wait
mhm.
a minute, they just got to me. What happens to the kindergarten, first, and second grade teacher? You know, and so Bill is sharing a stat here that
Yeah, I think his stats may even be conservative, but we'll
right.
trust it. Yeah.
Well, yes, right. Nearly 3 times, or Black students are nearly 3 times as likely
Three
to be
times
students
and 2 times. Yeah.
as as white students when combining all K through 12 grade levels, and that's part of the issue, right? We are the ones that get the shorter end of the stick when these kinds of legislation are passed. That's what ends up happening. Case in point is when I was an assistant principal, um, it was a turnaround school, right? And so we inherited all of the beautiful children that were there prior to us, some of the staff members, that whole jazz. I met a young man who was in the 5th grade for the third time. He
Oh
was
my goodness.
15 going on 16 years old in the 5th grade. And you want to know why? Because he didn't pass the test. That young man was supposed to be a sophomore or a junior in high school. And we're talking about, oh, come to school and sit down, fold your hands, and wear a uniform. And what? I mean, all of the negative things that you could think of became associated with this young man because it was so hard for him to try to be a part of a culture that he had outgrown and an academic structure that he outgrew. Why should I stay in school? What's here for me? No, I cannot read. I cannot read past the 5th grade level. I should be in a high school somewhere taking AP courses. I should be taking geometry and algebra and working my way up to calculus. I'm here with the 5th graders who still like stickers, you know? And so that's to me a prime example of how it doesn't work. Retaining students doesn't work on a large scale. It doesn't work. Can it work? Yes, when there's intentionality behind it, when the folks that are making the decision are using data to inform their decisions, when people are being positioned and put in place to support that child, when that child is being heavily monitored, right, and taught explicitly, small group, all the things, that's what it takes. So it's not the retention, it's the attention. It's not the retention that causes the student to grow. It's the attention to their whatever their needs are, whatever the gaps are. And those educators moving with intentionality and saying, all right, we see where the weak spots are. We're going to help develop you here. Oh, you still don't know your basic sight words. We're going to get you on top of, oh, you still are mixing these sounds up. Okay. You're mixing up your short and your long vowels, and that's causing you to misread words and misinterpret. We're going to, oh, your pacing, your fluency, oh, your comprehension, your critical thing. We're zoning in on that, buddy. Don't worry, we'll get you out of that ditch. That's what shifts and improves proficiency, not holding kids back. And anytime that like I said, of course, as school administrators, it's a part of your story. But anytime a student had to be held back when I was a leader, that is the level of detail, right? Because it may have been something that we just inherited as leaders, right? It may have been a student that was falling behind that maybe we missed it, or maybe we took over a school and this is what we got. But you're responsible for those students and making sure that you put together an instructional plan that's going to meet their needs every single day. And the teachers have to do it in collaboration with what happens at home, and then what the administrator is holding teachers accountable for. So,
and also to report, without saying his name, obviously, but the young man I was referring to in that story, has since successfully graduated from high school and is currently thriving and enrolled in university. So, yeah. I still follow a lot. I mean, I follow their parents mainly. Some of the kids, once they get like older and like after high school, like if some of the kids will send me like a LinkedIn, request or a whatever. So I'm cool with that. But I'm like, you got to be out of high school first.
Yes.
So I'm looking at this. So looking at the Ohio data, they're not very explicit about it.
About what they used. I found something that said they took a primary test. Is that what you found?
Not that. No, I was like they don't. there's zero consideration. They don't factor in teacher quality at all, right? They're like, oh, that might be a good thing they could look at, you know. Uh, but I mean, you could at least like look at like number of years teaching, kind of like, you know, like if you were like a real doing a real like study, I would think you would want to track maybe not even just quality, but maybe just like years teaching, you know, for the teachers that these kids had. But um, overall, and you know, Ohio is a very diverse state. Um,
Yeah,
but overall, English learners were overrepresented for sure.
of course.
Um,
Imagine
low income students were the largest overrepresented group.
which group?
Um, Low income, and then Black, Latino, and students with disability. Yeah.
My God, for a practice that
So
doesn't work, it's so harmful.
yeah.
It's
Um,
harmful. And it doesn't really address the root of the issue. It is definitely a reactive response. It's reactive.
Actually, students with disabilities were underrepresented, which is
Oh,
interesting. They
huh.
might. I mean, and I'll tell you. You want me to tell you why?
I have my own theory. What do you think?
Afraid to get sued.
That because them IEPs and them 504s, I wish you would. I wish you would try to lead my child back. You gonna be
Because
left
if
back.
you, I mean, that's why every child should have an IEP, right?
That part. Right. I know they like. I wish you would click on that little retention button. I'm telling you, you and your school gonna be retained.
You're opening a can of worms. Yeah.
Right. Yep. They look
Oh
at
my
those
gosh.
accommodations and all that. It's like, nope,
Yeah.
no. But the truth is, you look at that child as a whole child, and you look at that child based on growth, not based on
Yeah. Yeah.
deficiency, not based
Exactly.
on gap.
Exactly.
When you look at those
Yeah.
IEPs, we sit in these IEP meetings, you're like, okay, well, which one of these goals did the child meet? You know?
Yep.
And so it's interesting, like, why can't every student get that?
Let's see. John Hattie from Columbia. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
Definitely.
So I've got another question, right? So,
Yeah. 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 Go ahead.
do you think third grade retention should be a state mandate, or do you think the decision should remain with educators and families? Like, I know that there was a point, and I don't want to quote it, but I believe that some states may have had a point where it was the decision of the school leader. You know, whether or not the kid was going. Yes, the educator, the classroom teacher would have to provide evidence, but the principal will be like, "Well, Johnny can't read," so that causes all sorts of
Yeah.
problems. But
Oh,
like, what do
Jesus.
you think?
No, I think it's incredibly flawed legislation. It's terrible policy. Um, it's punitive. So there's that. Um, and in terms of like who makes the decision, what I would probably do if I were sitting in the state house somewhere and I was really concerned about this, I would be way more focused on mandating that every school district in my state was using a high quality research backed curriculum, and
Yep,
that you know we set like particular expectations around professional development and
yep,
training and resources for our teachers.
yep,
I would also and you could mandate this, that a process for retention, not to take it totally off the table, but
yeah,
to make it much more of a collaborative decision as opposed to, you know, a state policy or even a principal. I mean, any big school, if your school is like, if you're a principal and your school is bigger than like 300 or 400 kids, you don't have your finger on the pulse, right?
yeah, yeah,
And so, you know, I think we should start to adopt and adapt. Um, Maybe not full, obviously not like full blown like IEP teams, but maybe you know what do we call them? Cost or care. These are like, you know, intervention teams that are made up of parents, educators, administrators,
Yes.
counselors, that that do intervention kind of work. And so, I mean, I think that you should have to be able to provide and present some kind of evidence that you know, you've done the
Yep.
work, you've tried, and I don't think you totally take away the option, but yeah, this kind of policy is crazy. I think Texas has a similar one on the high school end, where you have to pass like their state's like standardized 12th grade test
Mm-hmm.
to graduate or something like that. Texas has some weird stuff going. I'm not a full blown advocate or against
Yep.
standardized testing,
Mm-hmm.
but I think they should be used more to understand like learning conditions and like
Yep.
learning outcomes,
Yep.
and inform as opposed to make these very high stakes decisions.
I would agree, especially given that that is just one metric. I said this since I started, my career in education, because I'm like, these children are so brilliant. They're asked to, and I think we've spoke about this on the show before. Like, they're brilliant. They are able to show their brilliance in so many other ways that are not measured, right? That are not measured, that are not connected to any high stakes testing, and that part of them gets missed. So I always say, what about a portfolio, right? The state test is a part of a portfolio, right? And throughout the year, and this actually did exist in New York for some time before they kind of moved to just state tests. But I remember us having to have a portfolio with 10 solid pieces of student work connected to the standard, showing how the student had mastered, right, authentic student work. And
Yep.
then the state test would be a part of that to see if, okay, they've had a comprehensive enough experience and have mastered enough where they would be successful in the next grade, right? And so, yeah, I'm not a fan of retention, especially not how they've connected it to this kind of policy. Because, like I said before, I don't think it addresses the root issues. I think we need to fix pre-K. I think we're leaving points on the table. We're leaving points on the table when we don't
Yeah.
provide those early literacy opportunities for these minds that are just open and ready and willing. And maybe the experts can figure out a Montessori-ish way of doing that. But to say like, don't teach them words or don't talk about, it's like, that's just dumb to me, especially when our nation is so behind in reading and math. Like, what are we talking about? Like, if we could get 1 year olds with books in their hand, I think we need to go that route. And then
Yeah.
additionally, I disagree with these sorts of policies because, again, it doesn't put the responsibility where it needs to be. And it is a shared responsibility. But if we're talking about the lion's share, a lot of it is what is happening in schools. If a kid is in school 6 hours and 20 minutes, and you have a high attendance. Now, if you have chronic absenteeism, that's a different story, right? Your parents decide they're gonna go on, a cruise every 2 weeks, and you ain't never in school. We get it. That's why you can't read. But you come to school every day. You're there for breakfast. You get a good breakfast. You listen. You have no behavior issues. You come with your uniform. You listen to your teacher, and you still can't read, my guy. What's up? Why can't you read?
Yeah.
That then you go look at the third grade teacher and say, they that's all, it's all you now. What? No. In my school, I would tell my teachers, look, don't be afraid of going to third grade, because every single grade has the same level of accountability. So it doesn't matter if you have pre-K, if you got fourth grade, it doesn't matter, my friend. Everybody is responsible for ensuring that students are mastering these standards and becoming proficient in reading and math. Period. So that's my
And
philosophy.
I also question like the ability of the average legislator to make informed uh, decisions around like these educational issues. I mean, unless it's your specialty, it's not. I mean, it's just not most people's specialty.
It's not.
Um, and so there's that.
We
And
need
then
to be honest about that. I agree.
um, I'm not gonna like suggest their names, but the governor of Ohio, that was governor when Senate Bill 316 was pushed through, and
Yeah.
the main sponsors of the bill,
Yeah.
couple of senators, they all send their kids to private schools. So there's like this, I'm not going to name them, but I just think it's you have you have these like very out of touch, wealthy
Yeah.
white
Decision
legislators,
makers. Mhm.
politicians that are making decisions
Yep.
for children and families that really don't look like theirs. They don't really understand. They're so far removed from it,
Yeah.
and they don't send their kids into these own their own public school systems.
Yep. Yep.
I think that's a big issue here, right? Let's be draconian and let's punish the common people while our children are quote unquote thriving in well-to-do private schools, right?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess we can go into our final thoughts because I agree with you. I think that is indeed part of the problem. It is
Yeah.
indeed part of the problem. Um, we can move into final thoughts. I was just thinking about just the power of data. And one thing that the study provides is data, right? More information. And so if we know that based on what the study is saying, people started to get their stuff together, right? Like, oh snap. If you were chronically absent before and now this policy is in place, oh, we never miss a school. I don't care if you have Alzheimer's, you're missing an eyeball, or allergies, you ate that bad lettuce, you going to school. You are going to
That
school. Okay? We will deal with that when you get home because what you ain't going to do is be left back in the third grade. Right? And so
yeah.
those kinds of things. And again, I don't know that the report went as to say was so specific as to say exactly what families were doing at home. But the point is, parents were more involved, right? The teachers were doing their part, and so what if we took the information, we extrapolated the information from the report, and found a way to incentivize that and make that legislation or make that policy, right? We know because what it uncovered is really the behaviors that are necessary to help improve proficiency. That's what we learned. We learned what we kind of already knew, which is we need this triad. Like I said in the beginning,
Yeah.
we needed
Yep.
everybody, every stakeholder to do their part on a consistent basis. We needed them to be clear on whatever this goal is, right? To become proficient in third grade reading. And we needed to be on it collectively. And what if we do that, it'll work. So why not take that information and instead of using it punitively, create an incentive around it? That because that this is what we want teachers to do. This is what we want families to do. This is what we want students to do. This is how we want them to engage with this. What are your final thoughts?
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I don't. I mean, I guess in a perfect world, yes, but we don't live in a perfect world, and
We
so
don't.
my brain goes to like, what's actually possible? What have we done that may have worked, and then what new possibilities exist out there
Yep.
that are practical? And so again, I think the new thinking around these like centralized state policies, I feel like again are they punish young people, they punish their families, they punish communities, um, black, brown, low income communities. Period. Right.
Yes.
So I would love to see a world where we shift to holding the systems accountable. And we did have that at one point in time, and people didn't like that either, right? It was like very hard to have your school ranked on a number, and to have your school put into a particular performance band, and then like, oh, your school's not performing, so we're going to set up a system to come in and do an intervention, right? Which is
Yeah.
kind of what we should be doing with like students, right? And so we've tried that, and that system, at least in California, has completely gone away. So we really don't have any accountability, and as a result, we still see the abysmal numbers for reading in California for low income Black and brown kids. Period.
Yes.
Like it hasn't even changed.
Mm,
Um, and so I would love to see more accountability for systems, stronger, like I said earlier, stronger evidence based reading instruction, curriculum,
yep.
early screening, and timely intervention.
Please.
So we're like doing screening early on, and intervention as early as possible. Also, like the least intrusive kind of intervention. It doesn't always have to be pull out. You can do a lot of this stuff in the classroom.
Yes.
Um, Ensuring that we have qualified and licensed teachers in every classroom.
Yes.
Are we offering tutoring? Are we offering like summer support for? We didn't even talk about summer school.
Yeah.
Um, do we have differentiated instruction for English language learners and students with disabilities? Do we have transparent reporting from schools to families, right? Are schools being transparent about their data? Like if I want to go to
Honest.
your school, if I want to go to your school, and if I have a Latino student with an IEP, can I go and look at the data disaggregated for how these students are doing in your school system? That's what I want to see.
Yeah.
And then some kind of corrective action if districts continue to like fail kids. Like there needs to be some kind of that's where you get out the hammer, right?
That's that's where you get
And
out
it
to him.
maybe it's like leadership, getting rid of superintendents or principals or whatever. But I think putting all this weight on the backs of like families and students is 100% like the wrong direction. But
Yeah.
great topic. When I saw you put it up, I was like, oh no, we're not going to talk about reading anymore. But then I looked a little deeper, and I was like, oh, this is much bigger. This is like philosophical.
Yeah. 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 And I mean, I don't think this whole retention conversation is going to be done anytime soon, because I think states, they're spinning their wheels and trying to figure out how do we solve this problem. But I don't think the answer is ever going to change. I think it's all the things you just said, right? And it is the consistency of implementing what we know works. I think we have learned what works years ago. We knew what worked before Fontes and Pinnell came on the scene, but then we allowed people to tell us that that wasn't it, and we needed to shift. And a whole generation is not reading, you know? And so I think states are spinning their wheels trying to figure out what to do. And I get it. But I also think you guys need to talk to the practitioners, the people in the schools, the people in the classrooms, right? The community workers that go to read in these classrooms, the grandmas for literacy, or the people that came on with us. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Toya, you need to talk to people that are practitioners that are in the field supporting this work, and instead of like whoever goes to the country club with you. They don't know what they're talking about. They're too far removed, and they're not invested in public education. You've got to talk to people who are invested in public education to get some real feedback on how we can improve this without having this very weird tone deaf legislation in place. And those are my final thoughts. I'm Jubilee. That's David Castillo, and you have been tuned into the South Star Classroom. Please tune in next week, 3 p.m. Pacific time, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Next Tuesday. Did I say Tuesday? Because I always be messing that
Tuesday.
up.
Yep.
All right. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Yeah.
Bill, Eric, we had Kiana. We had some folks that I haven't seen in a while in here. So thank you for tuning
Oh
in.
yeah. Thank you to the chat. We love the engagement. That's great.
We really, really do. And join us again next week. All right. Until next time. Peace out.